introduction and let all the information about your company to everyone, and also about introducing me with Fortinet here. Hello, everybody. We are going to get started on some security awareness and education and how important that is for your end users. So this slide here is really just, I'm not going to go through each line slide by slide. You all can read. The idea basically here is that there's a lot of things happening out there that are not good, right? Security breaches, bad stuff. And one of the unique things about Fortinet is that not only do we detect it, investigate, look at the information, see what it is, and detect it, we also remediate it, right? So we have hooks into all of our products that once something is detected and found to be not good, bad, something that's malware detection there, we will notify all of the other products and do that immediately, locally, as well as globally. So we'll get into that in a little more detail, but we have over 2.5 million units worldwide. Actually, it's 2.7 now, that are all reporting into our FortiGuard threat research labs. And what happens is when something is detected, it gets put up to the labs, and then it'll get pushed out to all of those units. So you're always getting those updates as long as you're keeping your subscription happening there. So some of the things that are very interesting about this slide as well is that, I mean, you look at these numbers, I mean, it's been a 300% uptick in the first 3 months, over $206 million. You can see in ransomware, just on 5/16 alone here. One thing that's really interesting, I thought, was, and I've seen these numbers move around a little bit, but if you look at this one here, it says the average incursion went from 186 days. So think about that. So when something gets into the network or something gets on a PC, if it's unknown, it can take as long as, you know, the average amount of time, 186 days. You know, that's quite a bit. That's 3 to 6 months, right? So something's on your network, looking around, gathering information, someone's in there, and you don't even know about it. And out of that, just to understand how this happens, is they're saying phishing is responsible for 91% of these breaches. And you say, wow, that's interesting. What is this phishing all about? Well, you probably heard the term phishing before. It's we'll get into some more details on it, but it can be something as simple as an email that you get from some source that could be something that you're interested in. And we'll get into some of that, like some social media and things like that. The way that they play games on you and send you emails, and you think it's someone reputable, but it's really not, and then you click on things, and certain bad stuff begins to happen. But I'll get into those details as we go through the slide deck. So 100% of the victims here, it says, have up-to-date antivirus signatures. You say, well, how can that be? If my antivirus is up-to-date, how can I possibly be getting this bad stuff happening in my network, right? Because antiviruses work on signature-based information. It's a database of signatures. And if you don't have a signature, but something new, it's malware that's unknown, that's when it gets not detected by the antivirus, right? The 90% of the breaches are involved in use of stolen credentials, right? People get your information, they get your password, they get your social security, they get things or personal information from you, right? And then a lot of the 67% of the companies have learned that they were breached from some external entity, right? Someone from the outside that got in. And that could happen via, like I said, the email. It could be a malicious web link. It could be even USB sticks, and we'll get into those as well. And then it says here that says that 46% of those systems had no malware on them. So again, the signature-based detection. So you have to realize how these things happen and what to be aware of and how to protect yourself from these things. It's very important that the end users be educated on very simple things that even though you tell them hey, don't do this or don't click on this, they might still do it. So there's things you can put in place to check to see if those things are happening or if they're listening to you or not, right? The old saying, if you tell somebody one time or two times or three, it's not till like the 9th time before they actually start to listen or get it in their system to understand not to do something, believe it or not. I thought that was a pretty high statistic myself. But so out of these, there's 64,000 incidents, 2,000 or over 2,000 breaches. So a lot of people have resigned because of breaches in their network. This is a Verizon breach report you can get online. It's available. So there's trends, there's happening. It's not a matter, basically it's not a matter of if something is going to happen anymore. It's just a matter of when. You will have some type of breach, something will happen to you. No matter how much security you try to do, even if you disconnect yourself from the internet completely, something's going to happen. And then a good case on that is, if you all have time, or if you're familiar with, maybe not, if you remember the Stuxnet malware that happened quite a few years ago. That was the Iranian nuclear facilities. They were completely disconnected from the internet, and we were still able to get something in there. Who did it? Well, you know, we all have our ideas on how it happened and what happened, but basically malware was put into their nuclear plants to hinder them from purifying the uranium. And you can look that up on Wikipedia and whatnot, but it was basically from a USB stick. So there you go. You were not connected to the internet at all, and you still ended up having something happen to you. So here's just a question for you to think about. And what do you think that the average cost of a data breach was? This was back in 2014, okay? So, and I'll give you all a second to think about that. You say, well, 2014, I mean, you know, I don't know, what could it have been? You know, how much really could it have been? Well, these reports have shown, I mean, the average data breach costing $3.5 million, right? High-tech attacks, high-cost data breaches, $3.8 million, right? Target alone, remember that data breach at Target? $162 million. I mean, it's incredible that these attackers are able to do this. This is what they do for a living, right? There's a whole dark side out there. The internet is not everybody shaking hands and singing Kumbaya, right? The internet is full of interesting characters, I should say, right? And they're looking for ways to get in. Now, do you think they're going to come in the front door? You think they're going to take a tank and try to break in the vault in the front door? No, they're going to do something a lot easier than that. They're going to play games, social media. There's one big one. I mean, why don't I just call somebody inside and have them open the door for me and let me in? And that's usually the way these things happen. Then they find vulnerabilities in software. Right? What is a vulnerability? It's something that's a hole, a leak, something in an operating system that's really not well documented or unknown to the massive quantities of users out there. So they find these vulnerabilities and then they exploit them, right? And they're very smart people. And they're very evil people, because what they end up doing many times is, when these vulnerabilities get into your network, they are so intelligent that they can actually delete themselves, and you can't even find them anymore, right? So they explode, they do things, they gather information, and they delete themselves. And so now you have no way to even find out what happened or track it. So it's very interesting, and there's a whole dark side out there to be aware of. So you get, well, how do we protect ourselves? Well, here's just a nice, simple example of social engineering. Someone calling up, hey, Amy, this is Joe. I'm from IT, and I'm working from home today. And so oh, okay. What did you need? Well, you know, I forgot the login to the server. You know, the financial server, whatever, what it might be. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay, no problem. There you go. He didn't have to do anything. Really, just make a phone call. How did he get Amy's information? Well, he might have been out on a place simple like Facebook. I don't know how many of y'all out there do Facebook. But it's a wonderful social media application program that allows you to do several things, right? It allows you to hook up with your family and your friends, and you might be so inclined to say even where you work. You know, oh, I work over at, you know, Joe's Pizza Shop, whatever. Oh, okay, there's Joe's Pizza Shop. Well, let me see if I can find out what Joe's secret recipe is. And, you know, it's just a simple example, right? So you take that information, you find, oh, Stan works over at Joe's Pizza. I wonder what his email is. Let me think about that. Joe's Pizza, let me go look at their website. Okay, it's joespizza.com. He's probably got something like, you know, maybe his first initial last name, and let me send him an email. And in that email, there may be a link, right? A malicious link to something like something that Stan's interested in. Well, on Stan's Facebook page, he's interested in music. So, well, let me send him an email talking about guitars. Maybe he's like, you know, he seems to like guitars according to his Facebook page. I'll click on that link, and then sure enough, Stan's vulnerable enough. Oh, look, I got this link, this invite here, or this message from someone that makes guitars. Let me check on that link. I click on the link, and sure enough, at that point, I may download something into my PC that is a vulnerability. It's something that's going to attack and start snooping around and gathering information in the network. And it's just going to connect to what they call a botnet out there, right? Something so simple, right? So that these are things you need to be aware of and teach your end users. Okay, you're getting emails from people, you don't know who they are. You're getting advertisements, just throw them away. You know, it's junk. There's no reason to be doing that, especially on your corporate email. You shouldn't be getting any personal email on your corporate email. You should have your own personal email, right? So the people shouldn't be talking to you on the corporate email in the first place. So those are just simple things. That's what a phishing would be, right? So they can go and they says here it's a homophone of phishing, right? It's going out and luring people in. That would be a typical way to lure somebody in. Hey, valued customer from a generic bank, Bank of America, I don't know, somebody. Hey, we need to get your account information. Oh, click this link so that you can, you know, set up a new password because something happened. We want you to. They're not going to do that. You're going to get an email from your bank. You're going to get a phone call probably, and even if it's a phone call, you say, well, wait a minute, how do I know that that's valid, right? Well, if you have access to your account, you're going to go to your account, you'll probably get some information there. You're going to get something, not just a blast email out there, hey, let's go and, you know, reset your password, or I need some information from you. And other ways to check, too, are like if you were to log in to, if you clicked one of these links, you could try doing something like not put your real password in, put a fake password in, and see if you get the response back saying, that's not your password. Right? Those are some ways to protect yourself. Right? You see, you go to a site that's just trying to grab information from you. If you put the wrong password in there, then it's going to accept it, right? Because it doesn't really know what your password is, right? So you got to kind of outsmart them. So, you know, stuff like this just goes in the garbage, right? You shouldn't be messing around with these types of things. So let's take a look at an example. I've talked about it, but this is a nice little diagram to give you some idea on how this actually happens. So you get this email. It's a malicious, we call it a malicious email because it's not really valid. Now, if you had some form of spam detection out there, it should have caught that email, right? Because it would have recognized it came from some place that probably is not a good source, because there's all, you know, there's a whole list of spammers and whatnot that get updated in these databases and whatnot for any spam. But let's just say we didn't have that. And we got this email that came in. All right, so the email comes in, and we open it up and we look at it. And when we look at it, we decide to click on something like that link that I just told you about. That might be going to the guitar site or whatever that link is. And what happens is those links are always getting spun up. This fast flux that we're talking about here is the ability to quickly bring up a URL that's in DNS, and it's changing constantly, right? So you have to have some form of web filtering. And web filtering is not going to be something that is really statically based. In other words, like a signature with antivirus. It's going to be something that you really want to have a real-time lookup to ensure that this is in fact a valid site. And you've seen these links before. You've seen them. They look different. They have a lot of characters and numbers in them and things that doesn't even really look like a website. But when you click on it, let's just say we weren't smart enough. We just went ahead and clicked on the link. 2, we don't have web filtering in our environment to even catch that, which would have blocked it. So that happens now, and that link at that point, what you just did was you went out to a website, you went out to a malicious website, and you clicked on it, and you did a TCP connection, and that exploit now just got downloaded to your PC. Now that exploit may not blow up for a while. It may have a timer in it, a certain date and time. It might have actions that need to be taken. You have to open it up or unzip it possibly, or maybe you don't even know it's there. You know, it just got loaded in. So at that point, the intrusion prevention, IP reputation, those types of things, possibly there's a signature in intrusion prevention that saw what that file was, would have caught that, hopefully. But if it was something that, let's say, was not in the database, it was a signature unknown, or if I wasn't using the intrusion prevention, then that got allowed in. And at that point, the malicious website now can download files, and they're usually going to be compressed only because you want to get around the antivirus. Now, the antivirus mechanisms, you know, they're looking for signatures, right? And they get updates, and we update our units. It's about on every hour or so that you're going to get these updates. But here's the key. If you compress it enough, then what will happen is the antivirus might not get detected, depending on whose product you're using. With our product, we can go down to about 22 levels deep at this point. Actually more than that, but the idea is that we could take that file if it was zipped up 22 times and unzip it and find the malware in there, right? So that's something to be aware of. All right, so that gets downloaded to the PC again, and at this point, the PC now, in most cases, and this is where we're talking about that 186 days of detection and all those things, is going to make some type of connection out to what they call a botnet, right? And the botnet is going to be, again, IP reputation. There's what we call DLP, which is basically fingerprinting, data loss prevention, app control. These are all things, everything I'm talking about right here is done in our product, you know, right on the product itself, right on the Fortinet firewall. So this is called full UTM, by the way, Unified Threat Management. So what happens is you're going to make this connection out to this botnet, right? And now this is where they started gathering the information, all the credit cards and the social security numbers, and they're going to do this over a period of time. And if you don't have a way to detect that, then that's it. There's your loss. There's your data loss, right? So having other mechanisms in place like data loss prevention, which is a technique that can fingerprint the databases and the PCs and whatnot, so that it knows that information that's going outside, looking for social security numbers, looking for credit cards, looking for those types of things. App control, IP reputation, there's a whole IP reputation database out there, right, that gets updated constantly. Those are the people who are hacking from other countries, right? Russia and China, and you always hear about that. Like recently we're hearing about the Russians doing things and the Chinese doing things, right? How do we know that? Well, based on the IP reputation, right? So all those things are covered in the Fortinet firewall, which is the FortiGate, and that's the full UTM license. So how do you prevent yourself from having these things happen? Well, again, it gets back to, okay, so y'all heard that interesting comment about the OSI model's got all these 7 layers. There's a network application layer and all that data link layer, all that stuff goes up the physical layer. But then there's this one layer that's called the layer 8 problem, right, which is the person between the keyboard and the the screen, that layer 8 problem. That's what happens here, right? Look at simple things. It says here, look at the website you're going to in the URL, especially if it's asking for any type of information that might be secure information. HTTPS is what? Secure HTTP. You shouldn't be going to an HTTP site if it's asking you for anything secure, password, any type of information like that. Take a look at that in your browser. The other thing to look at in the browser is simple things like, well, is it secure? There's that little padlock in the browser to tells you if it's secure or not, right? Be suspicious of email requests that are sensitive information. Of course, someone's asking you for information or sending you some bogus bank. I mean, I get them all the time. I don't know, I get them frequently. You get those emails saying that there's a bank situation, or what's the recent one I got? They're asking for information from you, like, oh, there's a mailer demon, your email was not delivered. Like, I never even sent this email, so why am I clicking on it to find out what it was, right? Things like that. And again, like I mentioned, you can enter a fake password if it's asking for that, just to see, is this valid or not? Because if you ever have a question, even go in your own bank or your own stuff, you might want to do that once in a while. Just try it. Make sure it's coming back and saying, hey, that's not your password. You're not legitimate. So then you'll know that you're connecting to, at least have some more confidence that you're connecting to the right site, right? Other things there's 3-factor authentication. The simple things like the banks that are out there, a lot of them are asking for some other piece of information besides your username and password, like what is your favorite hobby or things like that in your profile. Some of the banks do that now. But just the user ID, the user has to be aware of this. People in your network that are just clicking on any conceivable email that comes in and unzipping stuff, that you really need to make them aware of this. Don't fill out forms contained in the email, right, asking for sensitive information. It shouldn't be asking you for information inside the email, right? That's just, the email is not really encrypted, right, for the most part. I mean, it can be encrypted depending on the servers, how they set them up, but for the most part, it's not. Keep your browser and operating system up to date, of course, right? Always you run with, as much as you can, the latest versions of your browser and your operating system to make sure that there's not vulnerabilities. Have some type of antivirus running to protect yourself from that, right? Thoroughly check your credit card and bank account statements regularly. I hope you do that. I mean, this is common sense stuff, right? You want to make sure that your credit card's not getting racked up from somebody that you don't have any idea. You see a bill come in at the end of the month, like, wait a minute, where's this coming from? You should definitely do this. This is common sense stuff. Always use updated antivirus, right? Firewall software, of course. That's what you're paying for. You're paying for some subscription, hopefully. Now, Fortinet has what we call the Forti client software, and you can download that for free. That doesn't cost you anything. So if you wanted to have a free malware, you could do that. You could go out to Fortinet and download our malware. Now, the idea of that is that you're going to get updates and everything, and that's only antivirus. It's not going to do all the other stuff, fancy stuff that you want to do for web filtering and IPS and all that. That you need to get a license for, but for just a regular antivirus, if you wanted something like that for free, you can get it from Fortinet. When in doubt, you always want to check, right? Check the authenticity of the message. Make sure it's going directly to that institution, or it's coming from the institution that says what it is. Usually, I mean, this is just common sense. If something sounds too good, then usually it is, right? So just keep an eye on what's going on and be aware of who's communicating with you, what they're asking. I mean, you get these things all the time. You got to wonder. Some people wonder, how do they find this out? Well, you just go on Facebook and look up your name, and guess what? Hey, you're telling everybody, the world, everything about yourself. So those are some things to be concerned about, what you share on Facebook, what you share on social media, what you tweet, things like that. I mean, there's just simple stuff these are the types of things that they gather information on, and they can break in and, get you to click on that link. And here's another way, like we said earlier, it doesn't have to be always an email or a link. It could be a USB, right? And you say, oh, well, do this as a test to your customers out there, your employees. Throw a couple USBs in the lobby. See how many people grab the USB and walk off with it. And meanwhile, what's in it? You could have something very malicious on that USB that's not going to get detected unless they have some type of client on their PC that's going to stop that from happening, right? So just simple stuff. There's several studies on the USB attacks, and there's video demonstrations out there at all 9 yards. I mean, it's very, very simple. A lot of the stuff that happens on networks and breaches is just unbelievable. I mean, you go out to YouTube anytime and look up, data breaches, and there's people that make a living at this that just show you how they break into networks. I mean, simple things. They'll go up to, let's just say it's a substation, Florida Power and Light substation. I'm just picking one out of that thing here. And they'll go into the place and they'll say, hey, we work with, who do we work with today? We work with Comcast, and we heard that you were complaining about some slow activity and whatnot. And they'll say, oh yeah, sure, and they just let them right in the front door. I mean, you got to have a policy. Who are you? Let me see your identification. Let me see the company. Okay, did we ever put the call in? Call the guys in the IT department. Find it. It's just all this simple stuff to get right past that receptionist, and they're in the door. I can tell you, it just happens all the time. You know that. And it's just simple stuff that gets them in the door. It's a lot of it is just the social media piece that people have to be educated. There's things you can do. You can run campaigns. You can try them yourself. You can run some phishing campaigns, construct emails that are harmless to see who's clicking on what and doing what. You can play games with your own employees, right? And see who's doing what, and then they can educate them on it. You just come back and say, listen, you really shouldn't do that. This is dangerous to our corporation. It's dangerous to get this information out there. You got to teach them, right? Teach them not to give up any personal information or political information. Or I'm sorry, political, intellectual information without being sure of who they're talking to. People like to trust. It's human nature. It's human nature to have a trusting feeling towards another human being. But then in the end, you have to have your guard up. You always have to have your guard up. There's bad guys out there that are always portraying good guys, and they're really bad people. So you need to be aware of that. And you always, it would be nice if we lived in that type of world where we're all singing Kumbaya and holding hands. But in reality, we all know it's not that way. So we need to keep an eye out. Implement USB control on machines. This is very important. You should have some type of client running on the machine that's going to detect the USB device, and if there's any malicious code coming in. That's all. We have all that with our 40 client software as well. Try dropping USB keys, simple spyware. You can do these are some things you can do. Have an ongoing security awareness program in place. You should always be updating your employees. Not just, this is just one thing we do when you first start the company and then you never hear about it again. You should probably be doing it. Every couple months or so, you should be updating people and saying, listen, this is, we got to go through this, got to keep you aware of it. So those are some things to be aware of with the end user education and things to check for. Now, like I said earlier, with FortiGate, you have the ability to check these things all in one box. We have other solutions like Sandbox, and Sandbox is another solution that would check what they call a zero-day detect, right? So if it's something that's not in an antivirus database, or it's not known, it's unknown, what it does is it runs it in the Sandbox and it finds it with the special magic that we have in our devices. It's our what we call CPRL, which is our language that detects all unknowns, believe it or not. And what it does is it runs against them these different algorithms, and then it'll find it, it'll build a signature on it, and then it'll update all of the devices locally, right? So you're always getting an updated database. Those are 0 days. Those are the ones that are pretty dangerous. Those are the ones that that you hear about. You can get like 99, 98% catch rate on the other stuff, but that 1% that gets through can really be dangerous. So hopefully that was a good information for you all, and I'll open it up to some questions now. If you want to do that, Donna.